Way back in 2016, when the Remain campaign was running and kicking off, one of the things that they should have done and would have been a fantastic, campaign thing for them to do would have been to show just a picture on one side of an empty gate saying, EU citizens, and the other one saying, third country citizens, and have all the people coming through from that gate in that massive queue being British people. I guarantee you, if that had run, that would have affected a lot of people's minds, because very, very soon, as I've always predicted, in the summer, and again, unfortunately, we haven't had this because of COVID, a lot of people, especially sort of like middle class people, do travel to Europe quite very often. And it is quite wrong to say that the Brexit vote was driven by working class people. It wasn't. If you look at the data, if you look at the numbers where the amount of vote came from, they came from the very sort of traditional middle class, middle England people. Those were the people who drove the Brexit vote. And one of the things that they have been so used to is just popping off and back to Europe, having no issues, barriers, or anything like that. And soon, I can almost guarantee you, we will get stories in the newspaper saying, the Daily Mail, Telegraph, whatever, they practically write it themselves. The EU ruined my holiday. I guarantee you, because this is what a lot of people are expecting when they go back to traveling, when all, COVID's all said and done with. They want faff-free travel. Now, that's not going to be the case. And things are only going to get worse. And again, this is something that they were warned of back in 2016. And this will again be a massive driver and push people back to saying, well, this is what we didn't vote for Brexit. So anyway, before we go jumping into today's article, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And also down below, there are links to my Patreon page, as well as one optimization link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel that way. So on with the article. This comes from Prospect Magazine. The title of New Post-Brexit Travel Systems Are About to Kick In, and the UK is Not Prepared. Whenever has been the UK prepared for anything to do with Brexit, though? So travel to EU countries during the last few months has been described as a real faff, and worse. And the public, used until recently to crossing those borders very smoothly and with the minimum preparation and paperwork, will be expecting faff-free journeys post-COVID. The House of Lords Justice and Home Affairs Committee, of which I am a chair, fears this will not be so, and we are urging the government to take active steps to try and prevent this. Having left the EU means that we are now subject to the EU's border controls, the same controls as every other third country. Some changes have already been in play: limits on duration of stay, rules on passport validity, etc. But the EU is now preparing to launch 2 new border systems, and they will further impose checks, including UK citizens. And it will affect plenty of them. In 2019, pre-COVID, there were almost 67 million visits to the EU from the UK for leisure and for business. Sometime in 2020, we do not know when, we will be facing a new disruption to travel. But instead of engaging with our government's policy, it seems to, quote, wait and see. The new European Entry and Exit System, or the EES, will be used biometrics at the border to record people entering and leaving. Airport travellers will encounter this on arrival, but for millions on trains and cars, on ferries, and travelling through the tunnel, the checks will be on departure, as well as facial images, passengers will be required by EU law to submit fingerprints, meaning they will have to exit their vehicles, as transport operator Eurotunnel has said. That would also be unsafe because it would take place in the middle of live traffic. All of this will be under a very heavy supervision of EU officials at the juxtaposed controls used by the UK and French authorities at Dover, Folkestone, St Pancras, and other Eurostar stations. And of all these situations are tight for very space. At St Pancras, the whole area currently used for queuing passengers will be needed. The entrance to the Channel Tunnel and, of course, the space to embark on the ferries are bound by the cliffs and the White Seas, with the terminal infrastructure, not to speak of the Dover and the Folkestone themselves, now filling up the space. Speed is needed at entry points. The slower the checks, the more the congestion. The committee was told by the transport operators that while lorry drivers, disciplined though resigned, will take the correct route when they are queuing on the motorway, the public will likely look for other routes, understandably under pressure from a far more carefully for family and dogs anxious about their connections and, of course, needing pit stops. Congestion builds rapidly, as people living in Kent all too ready know. Add, of course, the privacy implications of the checks to be made. The European Travel Information Authorization System, or EAS, will be issuing authorizations to travellers who do not hold a visa to enter EU countries. And of course, Norway, Switzerland, Iceland, and Liechtenstein, but not Ireland. You don't need a visa if your stay is shorter than 90 days. But very many holidaymakers and business travellers will need to go through that online process, with the inevitable difficulties for those who cannot access the technology or are not adept at using it. They will have to submit, and for a fee of €7 for personal details, including current occupation and educational attainments. This system will assess whether you are a security and illegal immigration or high epidemic risk, with the checks against the EU and Interpol databases of algorithmic profiling. This is, of course, profiling particularly concerns the committee and is both automated and, of course, human elements. Proofing does not have to be an unblemished reputation to avoid discrimination. The committee has been told that there's no such thing as unbiased data. But who uses that data? Up to 5% of applications are flagged or expected to be flagged by the algorithm for minimal processing when the outcome is decided by the human decision makers in the relevant country. Under what law? What safeguards will there be? How long will this take for the traveller, and who expects to be able to hop over to France at short notice? Can you reapply? How can you appeal effectively? And when is the appeal in this another country when you can't go there? There are more issues like this, but crucially, most UK citizens will not expect any of them to arise. The members of the committee are, quote, seasoned politicians who tend to far more be concerned than the almost alarmist approach. But we have taken a very robust line with the Home Secretary on this. A letter published this week has highlighted to the Home Office that there are also the legal, ethical, and logistical challenges that the UK is unprepared for. The Home Secretary told us that it is for the transport operators and the EU Commission to address our concerns. The operators have tried to work with the authorities, but in any event the government intervention is needed, they are not prepared. There are also many questions and potential considerable problems. So much scope of being working with stakeholders and with the EU. Should we still cease striving for information sharing, cooperation, and engagement with the EU? The UK should be reaching out and getting stuck in. After all, UK citizens on UK soil will feel the impact. And this is going to have, I think, a big impact. The second you start to tell a lot of these people, like I say, 65 million trips. I think it was 67 million trips back in 2019 when obviously things were running properly, not only just business, but leisure as well. That's going to have a massive impact. That is going to have a massive impact. I can guarantee you now that will have a huge impact because, again, as long as we're a third country, it doesn't matter. Unless we again agree to join and play by the EU rules on this, it's not going to matter because again, this is yet another case of where the UK really isn't as strong as you say, the Brexiteers made it out to be. But of course, that's always the case. Always the case. But of course, this is just going to cause huge, huge problems. I mean, what about if you're, connecting flights? I'm, fingers crossed, hopefully going to Japan next November. I'm going to go to Amsterdam and transfer there. How does that work for me if I'm transferring through Amsterdam? What do I have to do there? Same when I'm coming back. Do I have to have checks or whatever? How does this affect me? So this will have huge complications to hundreds of thousands of UK citizens because, again, no longer in the EU. Something that was again brought up time and time again, but we were told, oh, don't worry, it's not going to be a problem. And remember, Europe is still the UK's #1 holiday destination. As I said at the beginning, I fully expect there to be headlines in newspapers saying the EU ruined my holiday. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all